Jeff Peterson, a busy man yesterday. He wants all of your first-round picks. Miles Bridges sticking around with this team. We'll break it all down today on Locked On Hornets.
You are Locked On Hornets, your daily Charlotte Hornets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
In a minute, cuz we live.
It's Locked On Hornets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Thanks for making us your first listen. We're free. We're available anywhere you get your podcast. That includes YouTube. There's Doug freaking out on YouTube. Everyhornetsboxscore.com. You can go check his Substack out.
I'm so happy.
Yeah, Jeff Peterson cooking yesterday, no doubt about it. You can also watch Doug on Locked On NBA, where he can break down more of not only just Hornets trades, but all the NBA trades yesterday on deadline day. One of the wildest periods of deadline sequences that we've seen. You start Saturday, Luka Doncic goes to LA, and I say one of just to hedge, but it really was the wildest. Starting with that trade, it was all going to go downhill from there, but it still did enough to live up to the hype even the days following. So we'll get to all of it. I'm Walker Mail. Listen to me, WFNZ, every weekday from 12 to 3 p.m. Real quickly, subscribe to the new Locked On Hornets daily newsletter, one-stop shop for ultimate coverage of your favorite team. Locked On Hornets newsletter. Doug is writing that, lockedondaily.com. Subscribe at lockedondaily.com. So, okay, couple trades made. We can go back to the midnight trade. Midnight Miracle? Midnight Mark trade? There was the midnight trade.
I'm not doing that anymore. I'm not creating content for other people anymore.
Eric Collins, that's a shot at you, and not so.
I was like, wow, what are you talking about? Yeah, you're crazy. What are you talking about?
But we love Eric Collins. Mark Williams traded to LA. You get the 2031 unprotected first. You get the pick swap. You get Dalton Knecht. You get Cam Reddish. Okay, we figured there was going to be another move. At least I thought so. I know we talked about Jeff Peterson was not going to be.
This can't be it.
They're not done. Yeah, but again, they weren't. You and I had talked about this, preparing the people. Like, they were going to be busy. We would be really surprised if they didn't do anything, and that was not the case. The other trade they made, you talked about it live. You went solo, Doug. I appreciate all your hard work for the channel. The Hornets got Jusuf Nurkic and a 2026 first-round pick. Phoenix gets Cody Martin, Vasa Micic, and a 2026 second-round pick. So, for me, just to give you my initial thoughts, since Doug went on a solo episode yesterday, it's hard not to like this. You needed a big guy. So really, just go get a 7-foot body that is physical, because he has to be with not that much athleticism, especially anymore. So he's going to anchor down. He's going to just try to make it really hard to move him, which it already is with how big he is. He can shoot the occasional three. So now you're talking about some stretch out stuff. I think the defense would still allow Nurkic to shoot threes, but at least you know he's way more of a threat than what we've seen from a Mark or a Nick Richards or anybody that is above 6'8". You know, you have to go to Quan Jeffries or Grant Williams if you really want the stretch five. Now Nurkic can do that for you a little bit. But the real prize is the first-round pick. I mean, Phoenix is, man, they are in a rough spot. They have traded everything for a group of stars where it's just not working. I think Ramona Shelburne of ESPN yesterday said that locker room is toxic right now. Kevin Durant could have gone to Miami. They lose out on the Jimmy Butler sweepstakes. Phoenix, as a contender, thought it a good idea to go after the Hornets' bench players. So they collected Nick Richards, Vasa Micic, and Cody Martin. I like the first-round pick. That's the real prize here.
I was listening to, so after I did all of my hits and I did Locked On NBA and we did an hour-long live, and then I did the 45 minutes solo show for Locked On Hornets on this trade, I got immediately into my car, had to go pick up my kid, and so I pop on the Sirius XM NBA show that was on at the time, and a serious sentence that was uttered, I think by Ryan McDonough, who used to be like a GM for the Suns,
he was
like, we'll just have to see if Cody Martin or Nick Richards make them better. So it's like, okay, well, it's no one ever said that about the Hornets. I'll just say that.
No, they did not. They did not.
You mentioned the Luka deal, and I've got a take for you. Neither of these trades happened without the Luka deal. because so we have Harrison, the general manager of the Dallas Mavericks, for this to thank for the Hornets trades because of his ridiculous trade of Luka to Los Angeles, because that resets Los Angeles, gets them thinking, hey, we're going to win in the future, but hey, we have an opportunity now to compete in the Western Conference. So, but we gotta go get a center. So I think that gets this deal done. And reporting seems to suggest that it was the Hornets that called up Rob Pelinka and said, hey, we kind of like Dalton Knecht. We liked him in that draft. Yeah. We have this. Well, we do have a center if you would like to play around on that, and they did. But also the Phoenix deal, because I think the Luka deal made Golden State panic and say, hey, we got to go get Jimmy Butler, which kept him from Phoenix, which then Phoenix had to go in a different direction, retool, and they move Nurkic to Charlotte. So thank you, Nico, for helping the Charlotte Hornets, because we thought going into this deadline, right, Walker, we were like, hey, are they going to get involved in the Jimmy Butler deal? Several teams did. Are they going to get involved in some other kind of bigger deal to help facilitate it? That didn't happen, although I'm sure Jeff Peterson tried. That didn't happen. Instead, Jeff Peterson was able to take advantage of situations where Western Conference teams had to react off of the big deal that happened. So just smart play all around.
Yeah, and I don't think there's any doubt that Mark Williams is still here in Charlotte, or at least not traded to the Lakers if the Luka deal doesn't go down. Like, you do have to have a little bit of a degree of separation and workshopping it to say that Phoenix doesn't do it, but I understand your point. And the Lakers, it's just kind of obvious to me. You got Anthony Davis, you're not going after Mark Williams. If the craziest trade doesn't happen, then Mark Williams sticks around here in Charlotte. So absolutely, that is the first domino that falls. As it pertains to what shapes the Hornets' future. No doubt about it. Luka getting traded shapes what the Hornets' future is going to look like.
You know what's also interesting is that the Hornets getting this deal done, they not only have the Lakers and the Mavericks to thank, they have the Chicago Bulls and the Portland Trailblazers to thank, because those two franchises refused to move their big man. I'm sure the Lakers were calling on Vucevic. I'm sure the Lakers were calling on Time Lord in Portland, but Portland didn't want to move on from for whatever reason. So it's just interesting that the Hornets for so long spent trade deadlines doing nothing. They finally do something under Jeff Peterson, and guess who we have to thank? Franchises that were doing the exact same thing this trade deadline that the Hornets have done for so long, which is get stuck in the mud, inaction. In Chicago's case, they think they can win. There's like a real quote out there from their general manager. They think they can win with a roster of 9 or 10 good players versus going out and getting 2 or 3 stars. Like, mind-blowing quotes coming out from Chicago. Everybody's going, what are they thinking? And I texted Hayes. I texted Hayes, who's the host of Locked On Bulls, and my co-host on Locked On NBA. I texted him that tweet that went over what that Chicago Bulls GM said. And I said, Mitch Kupchak used to say stuff like this, and it would make me rethink my entire life, my career. Like, he would say stuff exactly like that. He'd go, no, that's not how you win in the NBA.
The Lakers giving up everything meaningful that they had in the treasure chest, Doug. The fact that they gave up the unprotected first, they no protection on it. The fact that they gave up the pick swap and they gave up your past first round pick that was LeBron approved, at least in the public. I don't know what was happening behind closed doors, but and I'm sure LeBron needed a center. But the fact that they gave up all of it for Mark, that's what makes it so difficult for Jeff to turn down. He can approach Dalton Knecht or approach the Lakers about Dalton Knecht and say, we're interested. We do have Mark Williams, give us everything or you don't get him. Like, I wonder, man, this actually brings me to the point that I wanted to talk about yesterday, but we get to going on so many different things, especially as it pertains to Mark. But what I like, Doug, is you go back to a couple GMs ago, not even Mitch Kupchak, but you go back to Rich Cho. It felt like Rich Cho was the guy that everybody called if they wanted to take advantage of someone. He was the worst person in the fantasy league that just didn't know what he was doing, or he wanted to make a trade, and sometimes he would win. It's not like Rich Cho lost every single trade, but there was some ones
Trader Cho was the thing.
He was absolutely a thing, and there were some really bad ones. There were some ones that worked out, but there were some really bad ones. Whatever it was, you called Rich because you knew more than likely he was going to say yes. Mitch Kupchak, the exact opposite, right? I think there was somewhat of an overcorrection on that. Even if Mitch said there are 3 ways to improve your team, the draft, the trade, and free agency, he only exercised the draft more so. Gordon Hayward, there were a couple free agent pickups, but really it was only just the draft as to why how he exercised improvement. Exactly. It's cheap, but also, whatever else was going through his mind. So you have a GM that seems to be exercising every single option to improve your team. Free agency, maybe a little different, but you did sign Miles Bridges, even if it was just retaining someone instead of going out and getting somebody else to come help you. But we have a GM that nobody's going to take advantage of. Is there a trade where even initially you thought your executive vice president of basketball operations is the correct title? Is there a trade you feel like he lost in the immediate? Because I don't think that trade exists. Because some of them were so low stakes anyway. It's not like anybody's going to have an issue with it. You get Josh Green for a couple seconds. You get a Kogi, same thing. It's like, yeah, this is great. This is fine. Mark Williams is the first one that you could debate or depending on how you feel about Mark. But you know me, I love Mark Williams with the idea of what he could become, and there's just no arguing, in my opinion, that you got more in return compared to what Mark is right now. Well, and I know they're not making the trade for the right now, but you got a lot. So you're just not going to get taken advantage of if you're going to call Jeff Peterson and try to get something done with him. You're not going to take advantage of him, excuse me. You're not going to get, some easy deal just calling Jeff.
So the last trade deadline, Jeff Peterson was not technically a part of it because he wasn't the general manager, although I think there were some questions of was he consulted or whatever. I don't
yeah,
really.
He was with Brooklyn helping, right? Yeah.
It's a little murky there, but he wasn't officially the general manager when they made the moves to trade Terry, to trade Gordon, and they brought back first-round pick assets. They brought back player assets. We go into this trade deadline, and we got on these microphones, and people would ask us, hey, what are they going to do? What's best-case scenario? What's worst-case scenario? And I looked at it, and I said, they've already done their teardown, and they got what they wanted out of the teardown. They can't do another teardown. It's not possible. You just don't have the assets that people want that would command both good player assets and first-round pick assets. And yet somehow, Jeff Peterson improves the offense, although that's an interesting question that I want to ask next segment. You improve the offense, but you got worse defensively with a defensive-minded coach. We should talk about that in the next segment. But you somehow got first-round pick assets and player assets with stuff that is like post-teardown stuff. It's crazy.
Yeah, let's take a bird's eye view of this whole thing. Coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
Bees everywhere!
Jeff Peterson cooking. What does it mean for the team in the immediate? What does it mean for the team in the long term? We'll get to all of that today on Locked On Hornets. Doug, I find it interesting that you said in the previous segment, you think the Hornets got better offensively, but they got worse defensively. So what's interesting about that to me is we've been talking about how Mark allows 40-point performances on this team, and now he's not. And you're saying they got better. I'm interested in your take. Explain yourself, sir.
Well, I mean, I think bringing in I'm pairing Dalton Knecht and Jusuf Nurkic, two players that are not only not known for they're actually known for their defense. They're just known for how poor they are defensively, right? And so their main focus is going to be on the offensive end of the floor. What can Jusuf Nurkic do for you there? Although Nurkic, I think, really good defensive rebounding numbers, but yeah, he's going to get punished unless he's like in the droppiest drop of coverage. And then even then, like when I was looking through his season, this season, there were a lot of fouls. Like he is, he's not a very disciplined defender down in the paint. And then Dalton, God love him, he tries really hard, just doesn't have the physical tools necessary to stay in front of guys. And so you're really you got to have him on a heater from three at the rim. And so, yeah, I mean, if you can't look at the trades like that. You can't look at it like, oh, these were the trades that are delivering the pieces for Charles Lee that are going to really make the Hornets hum. No, it was about acquiring the assets to then go and get the players that Charles Lee is really going. This was about Jeff Peterson cooking, not Charles Lee cooking yet. We haven't gotten to the ingredient stage where Charles Lee can throw on his chef's hat.
Yeah, and the offense to me, I do think Mark was actually better for this team offensively, where it was funny, Doug, when Mark came back, we were like, hey, watch out for Mark's offense. I actually think this is an underrated part of everything. He's going to help you offensively quite a bit, and he's going to be that lob threat for LaMelo Ball. And so watch those two guys create sweet music with one another. And they did. I think Mark, you could clearly see Mark was so much better with LaMelo on the floor. And look, to be fair to Mark to some degree, like everybody is going to be better with LaMelo on the floor. And you have Miles Bridges running point who can run some point forward, but Vasiljevic just wants to run pick and roll all day long and then put guys in jail and then pound the basketball and then dish at the right exact moment. It's just LaMelo, he coughs it up, right? Like he'll give it to Mark at the exact right time and create some easy buckets for him. And so I could understand why Mark looked a lot better than LaMelo or with LaMelo on the court. I think LaMelo got more dimes with Mark on the floor. Like you could see some of those numbers hitting once Mark came back. So that's where I think offensively in the post, it'll be interesting. But your boy Nurkic, he can shoot a little bit.
Oh, there
and Doug,
we go.
I'm sorry. I don't mean to steal your thunder. You've been begging. You've been begging and pleading for so long to give me anybody that can chuck it from deep that is 6'10" or taller. You got your boy in Nurkic.
Oh, finally, a center that can shoot. The Hornets have a center that can shoot for the first time since Spencer Hawes, the double zeros,
oh my God,
were a member of the Charlotte Hornets. It's insane to think about, but it's true. And so, you're going to lose something on the roll game, but I think you're going to gain an entire pick and pop game that you haven't had at all since Grant Williams went down with the ACL injury. They had a little bit of a pick and pop game with him, but now you've got one with your center. You can run 1-5, get to the pick and pop, and he did that a ton. Last game that Jusuf Nurkic played, by the way, was against the Charlotte Hornets. That was his last game before Phoenix decided to shut him down and put him in a reserve role. And in that game, it was just pick, pop, pick, pop, pick, pop, and he hit a couple of threes against the Hornets. I just can't wait to see them do a little bit of that. Because the non-LaMelo Hornets, however long we have of that, they weren't entirely interested in getting Mark involved enough in the roll game, and maybe that
and they couldn't make post entry passes. Like they just the Mark hands thing. I think that was Mark has good hands, except
I agree.
when he was not conditioned. And then I don't know if you noticed it. Like Doug. Oh my God, all the Mark stuff. I hate it because I love who Mark is and the idea and just who he is as a person too. But Mark was having trouble catching the basketball as well. But these were bad passes. Like they're bounce passes at his knees. Man, it's tough when you're 7'1", bending over to go get that freaking basketball. LaMelo's just like, nah, dude, what are we doing? We're going to lob this baby. LaMelo, he just... so instinctual. Anyways, like that.
Well, congrats,
that's what
Mark.
made it tough.
Congrats, Mark. You've just joined a team with two of the best passers in NBA history.
That's right. But so Mark, again, where Mark's hands looked to be worse the last couple of weeks, which I do think that is the case, that also was influenced by some real bad passing consistently without LaMelo being out there on the floor. So anyways.
But yeah, so I can't wait to see Dalton Knecht and Jusuf Nurkic get involved in this offense. And I think, too, you lose the roll game, but you get closer to the idea that Charles Lee was trying to implement offensively with this team when they were taking like 45 threes a game. And we were all going, wait a minute, why is he doing that with how this roster is currently constructed? Because they don't have shooters really all up and down the roster. Well, now you've added two. And look, Nurkic is not a knockdown shooter. Like I know people are going to run to the stats and go, wait a minute, these percentages don't line up with what they're talking about here. But you've got a guy in Jusuf that you have to respect, or you are going to leave him wide open and he's going to knock down a few. Either way, just having a center that you have to think about as a shooter is going to revolutionize what they can do in terms of movement of basketball, in terms of moving it side to side. I mean, it's going to be great. They're not going to win a ton of games the rest of the way because the defense got worse, because the offense didn't get like astronomically better.
Yeah.
And injuries are still going to be a factor. I put like the top side of like 20 wins, but this is going to still be brutal, but I think it will at least be more functional offensively than it's been all season.
Yeah, and I would say even more so than Nurkic being on this team, if this team is better offensively, it might come from Dalton Knecht with that more than it comes from Nurkic, just because there is the lob threat to offset the Nurkic shooting, because it's not like a great percentage. It's not like Miles Turner being out there or anything. I guess I don't know his percentage, but you get the idea. But with Dalton Knecht, who's shooting 47% from the field, 36% from three, now you have the shooting that you can depend on more than Cody Martin, who was unreliable from there. Same thing with Vasa. The creating from those guys, I guess I need to watch a little bit more about Dalton Knecht and his creating for others. I don't know how well that's going for him right now, but I do know about the filling it up. That's why you drafted him, and he has that capability. I wonder how much of that happens on higher volume with no Brandon Miller here to take any minutes away from him. And I'm really interested in what Dalton does for this team.
Well, he's a guy that can go and create his own shot, and the Hornets don't have many of those guys. I mean, look, they didn't have a good points per possession number against Milwaukee, but the offense just to the eye test looked more functional, looked better, and a lot of that was Nick Smith Jr. being able to take two dribbles, get to a spot, knock down a shot. It was decisiveness. It was his ability to create space, even though he's a smaller guy. Like, that makes a difference when you can have, if you have multiples of those, okay, now you can cook. Now you can actually get decent offensive numbers. But just Nick Smith Jr. doing that in the last couple of games has made a difference for this team. And so adding Dalton Knecht to that is going to be significant.
Okay, coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
Bees everywhere!
Final observations and Sicko Satchel questions, fan reaction questions. These are good. Doug has been bringing in all of the questions on Subtext and his Substack, so we answer those on the other side of the break. Okay. Last couple things for me, and I promise I'm going to make it rapid fire. Did want to clarify the first round pick coming over to Charlotte. Bobby Marks had the breakdown for us, and so after this trade comes in, it's kind of a doozy. So I'm going to try to do this as best as I can. But Bobby Marks tweets out that the Hornets are receiving the 2026 least favorable first round pick of Phoenix, Washington, if it's 1 through 8, Orlando, and Memphis. So Phoenix, Washington, if it's 1 through 8, Orlando, and Memphis. The Hornets will receive the least favorable of that 2026 first round pick. Not bad, I think. Trying to put that as simply as possible. So there you go. That's what's coming over with Nurkic from Phoenix while you send out Cody Martin and Vasa Micic. Just wanted to do a quick send-off for both of those guys. Man, Cody Martin, cool story for him, honestly. Grew up in Davie County. Actually got to see him on the same AAU court when I played. I was a little bit older than him, so everybody would stay afterwards and watch the Martin twins just go slam it down in Davie County. That was really cool. Local guys that went to NC State, transferred to Nevada, had the fun Elite Eight run. And then remember, the Hornets draft Cody Martin at a time where people didn't even think he was going to get drafted. He was viewed right away coming out of Nevada as the worst Martin twin, despite winning conference defensive player of the year. And Mitch Kupchak got killed for that selection because he wasn't supposed to get drafted. Proved himself worthy of being an NBA player. Could create a little bit. I think Mitch had in his mind that you had a bigger ball handler, that maybe the shooting would come around, but defensively he was going to really help you. Really was a nice cutter as well. I think that translated a lot to the NBA. And then he got hurt. And then he stayed hurt after he got to his contract, which was awesome, man. Like, if you knew just how poverty-stricken they grew up, it was brutal. Like, they really, I have so much respect for the Martin twins. I have so much respect for their mom, who's an excellent person. And Cody got to that contract. Caleb got to that contract. So, like, I have a full heart with those guys, right? Like, it's a really cool example of what it means to just work really hard and get to some big time NBA contracts. And so just tip of the cap to Cody. Going to Vasa. Vasa will always have the first 2 weeks of April, as I've joked. But remember, Doug, when they go get these guys, Steve Clifford played every single player that he got at the trade deadline after offloading Gordon Hayward. Look, I'm not kidding. Immediately. And the other guys that were a part of your rotation, gone. Nobody played. And he played 4 guys off of the bench. Everybody else didn't play. No. Rapid A Sonk was Rapid A. No. That's what he was at that point. Vasa Micic comes in. Trey Mann. They uplift what it means to see some competent basketball. So tip of the cap to Vasa last year. This year it was a rough one, buddy. Not going to lie to you, but last year it was cool. Okay, Sicko Satchel, what you got for the people?
So I have one from 616 saying this was before the trade deadline, and it will lead us into a topic that I'm interested in. Still holding out hope a Miles deal will happen. It did not. Miles survives this trade deadline. Are you surprised?
No, I'm not. I thought it was 50-50. I thought Miles Bridges sticking around, especially with the way that Charles Lee talks about him at the podium, saying Miles gets Defensive Player of the Month. And by the way, earned it. Like, I do think Miles is the guy. We've talked about it a lot. Shows you a ton of effort. He's the one that is the leader emotionally, I think, for this team. Everybody points to him as that guy. He dies for the loose basketball. I always remember him going at Kevin Durant on a team that probably doesn't have a lot of guys that would go after a stature type figure in KD. So Miles Bridges sticking around with this team. Plus, the other thing real quickly is if you did want to trade him, and I'm not saying they do actually, but if they did want to trade him, it might make sense to wait until you only have 2 more years on a still declining deal from 25 to 23, get more value because the other guys think, well, we actually love this 2-year contract. We get a good player for what's only going to be for 2 years, and then he moves off of the books. He declines in value anyway. So there's a lot of reasons as to why this doesn't happen. I'm not surprised.
I'm not surprised either. I think the conversation probably went like this. Jeff Peterson went to Charles Lee and said, look, we're thinking about trading Miles. And Charles Lee said, if you do, it has to be for a high price because you're going to take Mark Williams from me. You're going to make me worse defensively. This is a guy that eats minutes. He's out there. I've been calling him Daddy Buckets in the Every Hornets box score write-up because he's out there.
I did not know that. That's hilarious.
Well, I know. I keep meaning to bring it up in the show, but we keep getting distracted from recaps. But that's what he's been. Like, he's been the guy, okay, no one else can shoot. No one else can do anything with the basketball. Give it to Miles. Put your head down. Get to the rim. And he's been making buckets. You've got, even if you are just interested in losing and developing players, you've still got to have a guy that can make you go, can allow you to function as a basketball team so that it doesn't get apocalyptic. And he does that. And so I didn't think they were going to move him unless there was something big in terms of both a young player on a cheap contract that was like a good young player and a first round pick. And I think conversations were had. I just don't think they got anywhere with them. It was going to be hard to trade him to Phoenix because of all the cap rules. So all in all, I'm fine with them not moving on. I think they will move on. I think they are interested in eventually trading that contract. Otherwise, the contract wouldn't be constructed as it is. I mean, that contract just screams, hey, we're eventually going to move this. That'll be key to do it in the second year because once you get to him being an expiring, he's going to be less attractive as like a player asset. He's going to be more attractive as like a financial tool, but you don't get back as much for financial tools as you do for players that can actually contribute multiple years for a team. So I think it'll be interesting to watch him in this upcoming offseason.
Yeah, that 2-year contract is the sweet spot. Totally with you because you get some benefits with it being 2 years, and then it's the bell curve, right? I think at the top right there is you get to see it at its highest value. And I totally agree.
And then don't forget that the money can help facilitate like the 20, whatever it's going to be, 27-ish. That money can
25.
help facilitate.
I think it's 27
25.
now. Then it goes down to 25 and then like 22.9, I think.
So if you want to package a couple of these first round picks for a player, that's making 30, then you get 25 quick. And then all you have to do is maybe give up one young player instead of packaging multiple people to make the money work. Okay. Moving on. 488 has this question regarding Nick Smith Jr. I was hoping his recent play would raise his trade value and the Hornets would move on. Do you think he wasn't traded at the deadline because the Hornets are happy with his progress and want to keep him? Or do you think there wasn't much interest from the rest of the league? Also, on a team with Knecht and Miller, how do you see Nick Smith Jr.'s future?
Okay, answering the first question, I will say I think you're probably in this space where he's just more valuable to the team right now than what he would be to other teams and what they would be willing to give up. So if the plan is at maximum value, you give him up for a second-round pick or maybe even 2 second-rounders. Like, I think that's probably what you would deem fair value. And if you're getting 2 second-rounders, well, one, Jeff already has 1 million of them. I'm not saying you can't always use more, but considering you have a ton of second rounders, you would only get, I think, in my opinion, at most 2 in exchange for NSJ. might as well just see what this NSJ thing is all about. On a team that doesn't have Brandon Miller available for the rest of the season, he's going to get a lot of playing time. He's going to get all the action in the world. It just makes sense to see this thing through as a late first-round pick who had talent, who was a high school prospect. So it makes all the sense to me to just see what happens this year and then figure out what you want to do with him after that.
If he was traded this trade deadline, no one was going to be trading for Nick Smith Jr. Nick Smith Jr. was going to be put in a deal as like a sweetener, as a kicker, as something that's like, okay, yeah, we'll throw that in too. And so I think what the Hornets are hoping for, and they've gotten some glimmers of this, is that he develops into a player that you want to extend, and then but you're not going to have to extend him on like a really financially, huge deal. And then if Nick Smith Jr. continues to improve, you extend him under a better deal. Then he's going to be super attractive in like a couple of trade deadlines or a couple of off seasons. So to me, that's the better play. And in the meantime, you're getting a player who's working really hard to improve as a defender, and he gets to be a model for how, and a continued project for how your head coach, a barometer even, for how your head coach is developing players on the defensive end of the floor that didn't come in with that reputation. It gives me hope. I said this on the live show. It gives me hope that Dalton Knecht can come in here. And again, he's not going to be an elite defensive player, but it gives me hope that Charles Lee can make him a decent defensive asset. And so that's good.
Does Jeff Peterson take a page out of the Mitch Kupchak playbook and do the $5 million a year thing like he did with Nick Richards? Is that something that Nick Smith Jr. plays himself into? One thing, I know we don't love Mitch Kupchak, but I did the second round picks and then the savviness afterwards, I think was actually, pretty smart, because you would get Nick Richards, then he was everybody's favorite trade piece out there because of partly the contract that he was on. Does NSJ ever get to that space where he's that interesting and that valuable? They would give Bryce McGowan's a contract when they thought there was something there with the free throw shooting, and they would give him the contract. I forget what it was. I apologize, but it was like it was non-fully guaranteed, whatever it was, but they converted it to something different, and then they could still move off of it if they wanted to. Is there any of that in Nick Smith Jr.'s future? So, maybe that's something that happens. What's his role in all of this? I think he's going to get plenty of playing time. Just to move on quickly, he'll get plenty of playing time. KJ Simpson is going to get some starts. LaMelo Ball's questionable, by the way, for the Spurs tonight.
Sound the alarm!
So,
we probably should have done that soon.
Well, trade deadline stuff, that's the only thing that I think can bring down LaMelo's availability to the third segment, but he's questionable tonight. I think that's a big deal, not only, of course, because he's your best player and then he plays, but I want to see what this means for KJ, Nick Smith Jr., Dalton Knecht, how everybody looks out there with LaMelo on the floor. So if he doesn't play tonight against San Antonio, then, maybe he's back for this early in the road trip, because it's going to be the last home game they have for like a month.
Yeah, I don't think Knecht or Nurkic are going to be available for tonight's game at San Antonio, but they could very well be available for Sunday's game against Detroit. And I wonder if you just hold LaMelo out for this game against San Antonio and then let him debut with Knecht, with Nurkic. I think both of those guys immediately start. I don't see any reason why you wouldn't, unless you really do want to hang with NSJ and just bring Dalton easy off the bench. I mean, I could see them doing that as well. But either way, San Antonio tonight, if Wembanyama plays, he's going to score 100 points. He's going to hold up the sign like Wilt, because his team has that's currently constructed before Jusuf and Dalton get here. They have no size. So
give us Melo, Wemby. You got one more home game for like a month. Give the fans at Spectrum Center. Plus, it's an easy PR win. Everybody loves what Jeff Peterson did. You bring LaMelo out. Let's just max out on the standing ovation. Like, if you wanted to give that clip and put it on social media and say, give the bold grunting face emoji and then give you all of the sound from the Spectrum Center, like, this is an easy PR win. If you could just somehow put Melo out there as long as he's available, go against Wemby. Everybody's cheering on Jeff Peterson for all the new pieces. Yeah, man, that's going to be a good social media video.
He's not, I'll tell you, Wemby is not on the injury report as of 8:30 a.m.
He's going to have calf tightness like Giannis did. Yeah,
it's always
hopefully
possible.
Not.
I mean, it's always possible. They just pull the plug. Particularly it being an away game. But yeah, I hope for Hornets fans that he doesn't catch the Spectrum flu, because even though you would obviously like to see the Hornets win, it's also nice to go to Spectrum Center and see superstars play. That's super cool. So hopefully he does play.
You want to do one more question? You want to end it there?
Let's just do this one real quick because it's not going to apply after the weekend if they do debut on the Sunday game against Detroit. This is from Schumann of the 22nd Mullins Regiment. Should anyone on the current roster be nervous about minutes role with the new acquisitions?
Well, I mean, yeah, Nick Smith Jr. is going to get opportunity still, even with Dalton Knecht. Maybe he doesn't get the starts. Maybe his minutes dwindle down a little bit, but I do think he's still going to get plenty of playing time out there. So looking at some of the other minutes, Mark Williams is gone. You have Nurkic that is going to eat a lot of that. Moose is going to get a boost. I mean, it feels weird because the names that we're going to bring up are guys that you didn't expect to play really anyway. So I don't know. Isaiah Wong's spot minutes might get taken. Yeah. You're talking about KJ Simpson. Probably, he's not going to get the starts.
I'd say there might be a little bit of a role for KJ once LaMelo comes back, but it's going to be super tiny. You're going to roll with LaMelo, Nick Smith Jr., Dalton Knecht. I mean, that's going to kind of be your guard trio. And then Josh Green, a little bit of Dalton Knecht, Daquan Jeffries, I think still gets a little bit of run. Tijon, I think they'll stick with Tijon for a little while here. And then Musa moves back to the bench. And I don't even know moves back. He's just going to stay on the bench. And then you'll ride Jusuf and him.
Yeah, I'm with you. KJ actually is interesting because you don't have Vasa anymore. Maybe KJ is the closest thing you have right now to a backup point guard, and LaMelo is the guy that I think he is the closest thing you have to a backup point guard. So if LaMelo's out, and we could absolutely see him miss more games this year, is KJ your starter? He started So maybe KJ actually doesn't really suffer all that much.
Well, I think if LaMelo and NSJ are healthy, I do think that his minutes go down. Now, we're completely counting out Cam Reddish. I haven't heard any, I don't know if you've seen any reporting, heard any whispers that Cam was headed for a buyout or a waiving or something, but, can't count him out either. Maybe they give him a little bit of look if Dalton Knecht is going to be your two, give Cam a little bit of look, or him and Dalton sort of play 2-3 with Cody gone. There could be something there.
We played this game on Wes and Walker yesterday. Who are the guys that you'll just never quit on? Cam Reddish is a guy that I'll never quit on. Anthony Edwards, high school prospects talk about how Cam was an absolute god in high school, how they could not stop him. He goes to Duke. He's the third wheel, is not very good at Duke, but has all the potential in the world. And this is his fifth team in the NBA in a short amount of time. And yet I will tell you, Cam Reddish could be retired and out of the league and have already gotten his post-athlete body where he just eats McDonald's and chills all day, and I'll still think he can come in and give you some buckets because there's just not anybody built like that. I understand my brain is telling me, Walker, stop, leave. My heart is telling me Cam Reddish still got something. All he needs is the opportunity. That's all he needs.
I'm looking here on the Hornets Twitter account, and I'm seeing a Buzz City been waiting for you for Jusuf Nurkic. Welcome to the 704. By the way, Buzz City been waiting for you is to me, I'm interpreting that as a tacit acknowledgement that the Hornets have not had a shooting center since Spencer Hawes. Good work there by the social team. I'm also seeing a welcome Charlotte's ready for you, Dalton Knecht. I'm scroll. I'm not seeing anything here for old Cam Reddish. Yeah. So I think that's all the sign you need.
Maybe he just gets moved on from. I don't even know if he's on the team, but if he does get an opportunity, this is the time. The fifth team is the time. That'll do it for Locked On Hornets. Thanks for making us your first listen. We're free and available anywhere you get your pods. That includes YouTube. What a doozy of a week. Hey, if we're giving tips of the cap to you, my man, because you're going on Locked On Lakers, you're doing Locked On NBA. We gave you a break yesterday on Wes and Walker, but we talked about scheduling.
That's a nice
you for today.
way. That's a very nice way to say you bumped me. That's like the nicest way you can say, yeah, we bumped you for time.
Look, man, you just take a rest. No, I'm actually fine. I'm actually good. No. You're tired. You have bags under your eyes. It was a lot of stuff. We appreciate everybody paying attention. I know you guys wanted the content. It's nice to see when we get to the comment section how everybody wants our emergency pod at 3 a.m. That was cool. So I'm sorry we had to make you wait 5 hours, I guess, from when we actually did upload it. But you guys are the best. We appreciate it. It's been a fun experience, even if my sweet baby Mark leaves. We do appreciate everybody for all the content that we can give you and then that you provide. We appreciate that. I'm Walker Mail. Listen to me, WFNZ, every weekday from 12 to 3 p.m. Have a great weekend. We'll be back with you on Monday.
Bye-bye.